Good morning, I was about to say, but hi everyone and welcome to today's webinar about change management. I will just try to go into our presentation here. I have so many things at my screen. So good morning, or hi, I'm used to having the webinars in the morning. Hi everyone and welcome to today's webinar about change management and how you can achieve a successful system adoption. So we are very happy that you are all are with us here today and tuning in. I was wishing for a very good weather in Sweden, in Stockholm, where I'm currently located. It's crazy warm, and I hope you have good weather wherever you are on the planet today. So because of a very tight timeline, we will talk about change management in 45 minutes. We will skip the long Cloudity presentation for today and just briefly tell you some words about Cloudity and us hosting, of course, and today's agenda to start with. So I will start. My name is Nelia Chelius. I'm the growth manager at Cloudity in the Nordics. And with me today, I have my dear colleague, Justina, who's a change management expert. Justina, please shortly tell us a bit about who you are.
Hello and welcome. My name is Justina, and I'm the change manager in Cloudity. My main job is to support the implementation projects with change management tools and methodology. In practice, it means that I cooperate with project managers and change leaders on our client side and the teams as well, to prepare them to manage the people in change, to plan the change with respect to the communication and training, and assure fast adoption for the change of cloud, which is in our case Salesforce.
Thank you, Justina. And then we're also very happy to have Cecilia with us here today. Cecilia works at our customer Ellab and will share a lot of valuable insights from their project implementation and story. So please say some words about you as well, Cecilia.
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Cecilia. I'm employed as a commercial scalability manager at Ellab, and I've been there for about a year now. So my role entails driving various commercial excellence projects and then scaling the best practices to achieve organic growth within the organization, sales organization, and implementing Salesforce and a more data-driven mindset within sales and marketing globally has been one of the major projects for us this past year, and that's what I'm going to talk a little bit about later.
Great, thank you. So me and Justina, we work at Cloudity. For those that haven't heard about Cloudity before, we are a Salesforce partner, which means that we are technical ninjas through the Salesforce ecosystem, and we tailor make and we implement everything that there is on today's Salesforce market to fit customers' individual needs. And today we have completed over 500 implementations in over 26 countries. We have offices in 3 countries in Europe and about 160 people on board, 150 consultants. This is, of course, a very rewarding job for us because we get to grow with our customers and follow them in their success. But it also leads to a lot of responsibilities and daily challenges, of course, to help our customers and to ensure a successful system adoption. And that's why we are here today, because every day we work with companies that are digitalizing their businesses and that are struggling with different challenges along the way. And we want to share some internal knowledge and have Justina sharing her best practices. So what's on today's agenda? We will start firstly to talk about project success in today's current world. Justina will speak around some statistics and keep you updated. Then we will cover common mistakes that companies make while implementing new systems, followed by consequences of that. And then we will deep dive into this a bit more and list the 4 key elements of successful change, where Justina will go through what we need to do in order to ensure high system adoption. And finally, the best part is the story about Ellab, of course, where we get to hear Cecilia's take on that and the story about Ellab before we round up and summarize the webinar at the end. So let's just start with our first thing on the agenda. Justina, I had a very dramatic opener when I was promoting this webinar in a video on LinkedIn. I was mentioning that many of today's IT projects fail. Also the dramatic number of 70%. Can you tell us some more about project success in today's current world?
Of course. So today's world of technology is growing extremely fast, and I think that it's not that surprising, but quite overwhelming. Almost 90% of the world's data has been generated during the last couple of years. And digitalization is growing not only in the consumer's world, but the organizations need to follow that quite fast. And in 4 years, it is said that more than 80% of organizations are going to be to migrate to clouds, to hosting and colocation services.
Which is a lot, 80%. So what does it look like when you consider reality in which we manage change?
Well, it's not that optimistic because if you look at the data, which say how many projects actually succeed in 100%, of course, it's not that good. So only 30% of change management projects in all, and with objectives met. And when it comes to the IT projects, it's only about half of the projects that are fully successful. Right, so quite appealing, considering the needs that are there in the market.
So only 30% end up with all objectives met, which is not much considering how much time and money you usually spend on such a project. Of course, we will move on to the why part soon and go through some common mistakes with digitizing and the consequences of that. But first, I have a question for the audience. So if you could answer the question on the screen that you will have in front of you, see if I can get this poll working. And so what do you think is the most influential factor behind the change failure? So if you could read through those 4 and choose one that suits you or that you think is the most influential factor behind change failure. And I will give it 2 minutes for everyone before I share the results. Can you see the results right now, Justina? Is it only me?
No, not yet.
Okay, interesting.
I guess everybody's voting.
I think we soon have all votes. Let's wait just another 20 seconds. Okay, interesting. So I will show you. Can you see some results?
Yes, we can.
Good. Okay, so interesting. Justina, are you surprised when you see those answers? What are your thoughts here? And what's the true answer?
Well, not at all. I'm not surprised because the first 2 answers are actually about the people influence to the changes, right? And the fact if they are successful or not depends on the people. And it's based in the statistics, and it's of course very visible in our practice when we cooperate. We can name plenty of factors, but most of them are around the people and how we manage the people and the stakeholders in change.
Okay, so I will stop sharing. So the sorry, like that. So the human factor kills the organizational change. Okay. These factors that you will go through now are common mistakes the company make while digitalizing their business. So what is the first mistake or the first factor?
So the first one that you've already chosen is the management and the leadership part, right? So first of all, the choice of the leader for the change that the companies are making. First, you need to have a proper person, I mean the personality, and but you also need to give them the empowerment, right? So, and not enough empowerment for the leader will end up with a lot of bad consequences for the whole project. But of course, the leader cannot be just the one leader, right? So we very often forget about the fact that to lead the change, you don't need one leader, you need a group of leaders. You need the coalition of leaders that will lead the change. And we very often forget about that.
Yeah, so you were mentioning consequences here. What could be a consequence?
So insufficient empowerment for the leader usually ends up with a low level of urgency for the change and for the project itself. And whereas the lack of involvement from the sponsors and from the other managers to the project lowers the project, the priority of the project, which in the end ends up with people not getting involved in it enough.
Okay.
Another common mistake, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So another common mistake that is actually very much connected with the first one that I mentioned is the poor stakeholders management. In projects like the ones that we lead and the ones that we have, we very often start managing the leaders start managing the stakeholders quite late. So it again ends up with low engagement. And there is, in 2002, Max Clarkson published the 7 principles of managing stakeholders. One of my favorites states that you can forget about important stakeholders, but they will not forget about you. It's the human nature. People don't like to be forgotten or missed out. It's important to remember about that, and which very often happens in projects.
And I mean, what could happen if this would happen? Have you experienced, just so we get some example of that, have you experienced such a case?
Well, I don't want to recall any specific example because it happens in most of the cases, right? The scale is different, right? It's not that rare as you might think. That usually results from a great load of work and the people need to do. The results differ depending on the importance of stakeholders. If you forget about the significant stakeholder, it affects the whole project's success quite seriously. If you forget about less significant stakeholders, it will not probably affect the whole project that much, but you will have to get people engaged later on, and you will have to lose more energy for doing that.
Sure. Okay, so we've been through insufficient leadership and poor analysis of stakeholders. What's next? So what's the third thing?
Yeah, so the next thing will be the insufficient communication. Leaders don't communicate the vision and the need for change enough. They don't talk to people, they prefer to inform them instead. in consequence, they don't gather the feedback. They lose the chance to manage people's objections, and they usually lose the chance for cooperation with the people and get them on board for the change. And the last biggest mistake I can think of is the attitude. If you could change the slide, is the attitude that the go live for the system means that the tool is adopted already, which is totally not true. The insufficient support for the users during the go live and the high expectations with respect to the people's performance in the transition period ends up with fear and low motivation to try out new ways of working.
Okay, sure. So these are 4 whys, and now we have more knowledge about why this happens, why so many digital transformations fail. But how can we address those common problems, and what activities increase the speed of adoption? For example, if we move on to the first, so let's, this is part of the 4 key elements. The first point that you were talking about, insufficient leadership. So how do we work with problems of insufficient leadership, for example?
Mm-hmm. So first of all, you need to build the whole coalition of leaders. So choose the people and manage them properly, and use them for managing the change. Engage the project sponsors. That builds the urgency and the priority for the change and for the whole project, so people get more motivated to get into the project and to actually work with the change to change. You need to involve the line managers to manage the change operationally, right? So those are the people who cooperate with the end users very closely, and they usually have a very good relationship with them. So using them as your change agents is quite crucial. Another one I mentioned already, change agents. So you need to choose, apart from the line managers, you need to also choose a group of people that will be your change agents. Those will be people who will get involved from the very beginning of the project. They will create the solution for the whole company, and this way they will be the authors of that, and this way they will sell the change to the others. They will be also very good support for the users once they start working with the system.
Sure. When we are talking about stakeholders and people in the change, is there one way to manage the stakeholders, or every stakeholder?
Unfortunately not, but there are ways to do that. So first thing you have to do is to list all the stakeholders, right? So look around, see who is there, who is going to be affected by your project, who is going to be the user, but also look for people who are not going to use the system, but will be somehow affected by it. Then analyze their impact and attitude to the change. So in Cloudity, we use the tool that is called the Power Influence Matrix, in which we group the stakeholders into 4 main groups. You have the key players, influential observers, active players, and spectators. And based on that, we have the recipe to work with each group, then manage them accordingly.
All right, so you're talking about stakeholders engagement, and how do we engage people in change? Because you mentioned a lot of different roles right now. So are there any specific roles necessary to manage change?
Of course there are. So I already mentioned the sponsors, the change leader, the change agents, but I would also like to add people who are very important for to test the system, so the testers. So choosing among the future users of the system, the people that will test the system. This way, they will also become the agents for the change. we very often try out, we very often go into the trainer approach with our clients. So we train the trainers that will train the users of the final users, the end users of the system. And this way, we also build the competencies inside the organization so that the people can support the users in the end as well. And the most important, I would say, role would be the system admin. That will be the person that will develop the system, that will support the users and continue the change in future.
So Cecilia, we will talk to you more in a second and deep dive into Ellab's story, of course. But can you relate to these roles, and did you have such roles in your project, and how did you engage people?
Yeah, we definitely had very clearly defined roles before we even started up the project. And I think in addition to me as a sort of the change leader, we had very important sponsors in the top management. For example, we had head of marketing, head of business development, and the president of our US subsidiary, who is our largest subsidiary. And we were all together in, one group along with the system admin and also a few of the key salespeople to try to develop and make decisions and, talk through all the different things in weekly meetings. And then we have, our CEO is also a very data-driven guy who views Salesforce as a strategic asset, which really emphasizes, the importance of the project and the system itself. And then, as Justina also mentioned, the system admin role is extremely important. And our admin actually is part of the sales organization as well as being the system admin. So she's really, in the middle of everything in terms of developing and feedback. And she's been, self-taught, but also with good help from you guys, and becoming a really, really good system admin. And we also had the champions, system champions in each country as the change agents. So definitely a lot of roles contributing into making it a good project.
Yes, and you will be able to explain a bit more then. It's very interesting. Also nice that not only we consider the admin as very important. So it's also like that in your case. All right, so the third element, the third key factor, Justina, I guess is communication.
Yes, it is. Yeah. There's nothing more important in managing change than communication, and communication in different ways. So first of all, it builds awareness, it builds desire and knowledge on how to change, and what to change, and what the change is going to bring to us. So it's very important to use the proper way of communication channels, and the people in the whole process, right?
Sure. So a change leader, for example, what does the change leader need to remember about communication?
So first of all, engage the sponsors to communicate the vision and build a sense of urgency for the change, right? They have the authority to pass it on to the people. Engage the team managers to communicate the details of the change and manage the stakeholders groups individually, directly, right? And they have the biggest impact on the people, and you need to use that. And the next two tips will be about the way of communication, because you can use one-way communication in which you usually use for general communication. That will be the one from sponsors to the employees. But there's another way, two-way communication, which is much more important, which means that you inform people, and then you gather feedback, and then you respond to that. This encourages feedback. It allows you as a change leader to get to know the objections that people might have, and to get to know it and to manage that, of course. Right? It gives you a chance to actually manage the change.
Sure. brings us to
the last.
Yeah.
Okay. The last would be the last point, the last tip that I would like to refer to is to weave the change in the daily work. So once you start working with the system, it doesn't mean that the people will work with it, as I already said. It only means that you need to support them even more than before that, and you need to engage them even more. So conduct team statuses around the data from the system. Talk about the data that's there. Stop talking about the data that is not there. There's one sentence that we very often use in projects. If it's not in Salesforce, it doesn't exist. So stop talking about the data that is not there. Organize Q&A sessions, because in the very beginning, the stakeholders, the users of the system might have a lot of questions, so give them opportunity to ask the questions. And in the end, to exchange the knowledge about how they're using the system, and advising each other on on the tips of using the system. And appreciate every success that is happening, right? So even the smallest one is very important. It makes people motivated. And of course, engage the sponsors into using the system as well. So it's not enough for the users of the system to use it. They need to see that everybody else is using it as well, especially the sponsors, especially the leader. You need to give the example.
Sure. I just want to say to all the attendees that we have here today that you will also get, of course, the recording of this webinar, so you will be able to move around and check things twice if it's something that is going too fast and you have questions about later on. Great. So that was the fourth key factor that we went through, and we will go back to them, summarize that, and now we will also have our live example on a case where we finally can talk a bit about how it was for Ellab. So Cecilia, you've been through this process recently. You've been implementing Salesforce. You've also been change leader, as you mentioned. That's been your role. So please tell us more about how you managed to get the organization on board, and a bit about Ellab's story. What was the project goal? Now you got like 3 questions, but project goal and story of Ellab.
Yeah. I'll answer that. So for those of you who don't know, Ellab is a leading supplier of validation and monitoring solutions to the pharmaceutical industry, mainly the pharmaceutical industry. And we employ about 440 people across 11 countries where we're direct sales. And we have been experiencing and still experiencing a rapid growth, both organically, but also through M&A activities. And a little over a year ago, all of these local offices were more or less doing their own thing in terms of sales process and the use of CRM tools. And with this continuous and fast growing of the sales force, we realized that we required a better management of customer-facing activities locally, but more than anything, a greater transparency and more best practice sharing and data sharing across the subsidiaries globally. And we also wanted to become more data-driven in the way that we worked with marketing and sales, and we wanted to have the CRM data and use it as a strategic asset going forward. And we didn't really have that with multiple systems and everyone working on individual stuff. So with that actually came the decision to optimize the sales process and then harmonize the CRM landscape globally with Salesforce.
Yeah, great story, great goals. And I like the goal of becoming more data-driven, of course, and harmonizing the process, having full transparency. And with all other companies making such a change, going through this goal, you probably also had having this successful implementation and end up with a great user adoption. So how did it go in your case? What was the biggest challenges? Maybe you can list some challenges and how did you handle them?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you can go through this process without any challenges. So there definitely was a few along the way, but I'll mention the maybe three most important ones. But the the case for each subsidiary was very different. Some of them didn't have a system at all, and some of them had systems that they've been using and developing for 20 years and were really, really attached to. So of course there were some issues when it came to convincing those subsidiaries that were really satisfied with their current situation, convincing them of this change, and make them realize that this was for the greater good of everyone. And I think what helped there was to do sort of a phased approach, where we started with those subsidiaries who didn't really have anything to change from. They were just excited to get a new system, and we wanted to allow for some success stories and some positive word of mouth in the beginning to spread from those early adopters to the ones that came a little bit later in the process. And I think also this is where communication played a big part. We were very careful to focus on what they would be gaining instead of what they would be losing. And the global transparency of data and connectedness of the sales organization was definitely a big part of that. And then the champions, as I mentioned, they've also played a big part in convincing those that were a little bit more hesitant, especially because the US is our largest market. They have been using Salesforce for a little while, and they took a really big part in spreading the happy message and why we needed to do this and so on. So that was one big challenge, and a second challenge was I think when you implement a new system, there's different people, different groups within the organization want different things out of that system. For example, top management, they want all the data, all the fancy reporting. And for the salespeople, it's more about having a tool that they can use in their daily life that makes it easier, and they can be more productive and don't have to spend a lot of time on admin tasks. So I think focusing on sales productivity should be the #1 priority. Essentially, you need people to use the system, otherwise it's just not worth anything.
Sure.
And getting as little friction as possible was really important when we rolled the system out. And that's where also the feedback becomes so important. We didn't want to develop something and then implement it and then just leave it. We wanted to do these smaller drips of new things and then get feedback on it and then implement it and do it more of an interactive process. And then the third challenge, which is an ongoing challenge and probably will always be, but with a new system, there's always these smaller adjustments and requests and even smaller bugs that will be brought to your attention as change leader or system admin every day. And people sometimes get really frustrated with things not working as it should, or they don't understand this process or why it's supposed to be like that. And I think in our implementation team, we really try to have this open door policy where we encourage people to share their frustrations and questions, at any hour, basically. And we made ourselves really available and set aside time to really, help people. And I think that was important to avoid these larger frustrations and serious resistance towards the new systems. We try to make it run as smoothly as possible. And it also makes it a better system in the end, because people have really good ideas when they start use the system, and it's just good to have that rapid approach to implementing and changing and adjusting so that it's a better system for everyone.
Yeah, I think the challenges that you're mentioning are very much aligned with the ones that Justina talked about, but this is like a great, all of them are great examples on how you can address that kind of resistance in different way, and also make it more positive in the organization, which is super smart, of course. Quick question, is something wrong with my network? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
I can hear you.
Good, because I just got like some notification here that I have problems with the network. So please let me know if it's going to be, if it's something is wrong with the network. But what a nice way of tackling those challenges, Cecilia. I want to hear more about how you worked with them and the resistance, of course. Maybe you can give some tips, because now there was a lot of different things that you did. What would you give other companies? What tips would you give other companies in the process of digital transformation?
I think, you know, as Justina also mentioned earlier, building that coalition of the willing is you know, everything. Identifying the top salespeople and managers and making them, you know, champions and real invested stakeholders has been, you know, just key to making it work, and also making it work on a quite you know, tight deadline. And you need both top management and salespeople to appear and actually be, you know, 100% invested in making the change happen. So that's, you know, the number one tip, and don't underestimate that. And I think the second thing is the training part of it. It's a much bigger part of it than I maybe, you know, originally thought, because it's not only the training when you're rolling it out, but the training afterwards is maybe even bigger. I mean, it's been 6 months since we rolled out the system, and we're just in these days, you know, setting or launching a new training program again to go over everything and repeat it, and, you know, try to keep that finger on the pulse when people have started to use it. So that's really
let go when you start the go live. That's when the work starts.
Exactly, and that's a big learning for me, at least, that's where the true work is. And then I think the final tips I would give would be to just make it fun and use Salesforce to celebrate those success stories. You know, adoption. People want to, you know, should be feeling like they want to get into the system. They need to have some sort of reason for going in there, other than just organizing their everyday work. But for example, we have this competition, global sales competition we have launched within Salesforce, which everyone really enjoys and likes going in, checking the scores on the dashboards and so on. And then we also have this every time someone closes an opportunity above a certain threshold, then an email is sent out to the entire team globally with some key info on that opportunity. And it's really rewarding when you're maybe you know, the only salesperson sitting in Philippines, and you've been working so hard on this big order, and when you finally get it, then everyone is notified, and you get this visibility and recognition from the entire company on that deal. That's been really great, and we started to just send them out to the sales team, but you know, more and more people have asked to become part of that email notification. So that's been a really positive and fun way to share success stories within the system.
Yes, that we also have those kind of emails. That's great for the person in Philippines that is selling. Also, great advices, all of them. And I really like the part of summing your advices up, like making it fun, engaging people, and giving them some boost in why they should use the system and walk into the system. Also, you're mentioning the training, of course, which is very important. And in your case, you did not go through this entirely alone. So we've been working with you in this process a bit as well. And it's interesting to us to hear your perspective. So how can an implementation partner help you in this change process?
I think it's a very important thing to choose the right implementation partner, because you're going to be working together for a few months quite intensely on you know, implementing these things. And I think 3 things I want to highlight is the project management part of it. I think maintaining an overview of all the tasks that needs to be done and when, and especially when it comes to communication and what, when, and how do we do that throughout the process. It's been a big help to have someone, you know, within the team full time to help make this happen. And then, of course, the Salesforce expertise, suggesting improvements and supporting this process of ongoing, you know, quick fixes and adjustments, and you know, last but not least, training our system admin as well to become quite self-sufficient and you know, really good at Salesforce. But we still use support from you guys, so it's been really good to have that support. And then, you know, the best practices that you have shared, both on, you know, how the system should look like and work, but also the process itself, and you know, communication and you know, things to be aware of, and just that support within the project also has been very valuable, and providing an outside-in perspective on how everything, you know, is looking. And it's easy to become, you know, very focused and blind sometimes when you're an internal. So it's always good to have that second opinion and some experience when it comes to that area.
That's great to hear. Of course, that's our goal, to be a partner that can see things from above and from the outside, of course, and give support in some situation where it's necessary. I see that we are running out of time. Time just flies. I wanted to ask you last question, Cecile. Maybe we can like run over some minutes with the summary, but just the last question about your role, because you are the change leader, and just something. Do you recommend this, like being a change leader in this kind of process?
Yeah, I do. It's been a really good learning experience, and it's been, you know, I think you should expect sometimes for it to be tough, because sometimes you will feel unpopular. That's just how change is. Not everyone is just going to jump on board, but at the same time, it's so rewarding when, you know, people start to accept and actually also appreciate the system and the process and the purpose for doing it. So I think it's definitely been a good journey and a good way to learn about you know, how these projects work and how to engage with people, and you get around the company, and that's it's a good experience, I would say.
Thank you so much for your participation.
Thanks for having me.
We are happy to continue work with you and see you make great big steps with Salesforce, of course, and continue your success. And before we finish, I think we just should sum up quickly what we talked about today. So we have some bullet points here. Before that, I just want to say every case of an implementation, every case of this situation or a project implementation is different, and the goal is different. And we are happy to open up talks and support you during this process, either if you have implemented something already that is not as you wanted it to be, or if you have thoughts on getting a new system and you don't know where to start, or how to get the whole company on board. We're happy to talk about that. So what we touched upon today, we will of course send the recording to you later so you can check everything again. But was the first key element was leadership, and build the coalition of leaders, the network of change agents. We went through stakeholders. Stakeholders also need to change, list them, analyze their impact and attitude to change, and manage that accordingly. We also went through communication as one of the most important parts. So remember that build awareness, desire, and knowledge on why and what and how to change, and proper choice of communication, what channel is crucial in this case. And as the last key element, execution and monitoring. So all these 1, 2, 3 above is not enough. So from day one, we need from day one where we have a new system or tool, you need to weave them into your daily work. that was the 4 key elements that we touched upon today. Of course, if you have any questions, maybe you have me on LinkedIn, or you have gotten an email when you registered, you can always reach out to me or to Cecilia if you have any questions about their process, or to Justina, which is the expert in this case, of course. And we are running over with 1 minute, but thank you very much for being here today and listening to our webinar. And I hope you had got some fruitful insights. And once again, thank you, Cecilia, and also Justina, for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So have a wonderful summer, everyone.